my dear students, welcome back to our English class. Today we are going to continue the same chapter, Henry the Chameleon. So let's start from the second part of this chapter. When I visited Henry, he would treat me the caution, sitting perfectly still on his perch with his back to me. The eye nearer to me would move round like the beam of a searchlight until it had me in focus. Then it would stop and the other eye would begin an independent survey of its own. That means Henry never trusting anybody. When the narrator first visited Henry, that time he saw that Henry didn't trust anyone. His eyes are very much curious and observing the narrator. If the narrator getting may harm, if he feels harm from the narrator. Henry took nobody on trust and treated my friendliest gesture and suspicion. Treading on his attitude, I would tickle him gently in the ribs with my fingers. This always threw him into a great rage. He would blow himself up in an enormous size, filling his lungs with air and change color from green to red. That means, first of all, Henry never trusts anyone. Then he found out that narrator was sitting over there and he was trying to patting its head. At that time, Henry was very much rigid and suspicious, and he just threw like the narrator's fingers, and he is just filling the lungs with air and blow himself with a bigger size. His body is blowing him it a bigger size and throwing the fingers of the narrator. He would sit up on his hind legs, swaying from side to side, hoping and frighten me. And he was trying to frighten the narrator. Okay, opening his mouth very wide, he would let out an angry hiss, but his protest went no further. He didn't bite, and he was trying to frighten the narrator. That's why he is blowing his body in an enormous size, and he opened his mouth in a big O. That's the narrator put his finger on his mouth, but he never bite. Henry was a harmless creature. It is not harmful. It was an harmless creature. If I put my finger in his mouth, even in his wildest moment, he would simply wait for me to take it out again. He was so innocent. His behavior is so innocent that the narrator put his finger on his open wide mouth, but still Henry didn't bite it at all. He can remove his finger from there also. I suppose he could bite because his rigid jaws carried a number of fine pointed teeth. Yes, it is the reptile, like a chameleon, it has his sharp pointed teeth. But Henry is so innocent, so humble that he didn't bite the narrator. But Henry seemed convinced that these were given to him solely for chewing his food, not fingers. Henry knew that he want to eat only the food, and he want to chewing that food, not anyone's finger. Provided I was patient, Henry was willing to take food from my hands. This he did very swiftly. His tongue was a sort of boomerang which came back to him with the food, usually an insect attached to it. Henry was taking food from the author, from the narrator, very sweetly. Henry did not cause any trouble in our house, but that one time when he threw cautions to the winds, he did create something like a riot in the nursery school down the road. It started out innocently, but one day he did almost a riot in a nursery school, because the thing is that when Henry went to that nursery school, everything is messed up. Everything was messed up. When the papayas in our garden were ripe, grandmother usually sent a basket of them to her friend Mrs. Ghosh, the principal of the nursery school. So the principal of the nursery school was Mrs. Ghosh, and the narrator's grandmother sent a basket of papaya for this nursery school to Mrs. Ghosh. On this occasion, Henry slipped himself into the basket of papayas when no one was looking. The gardener carried the papayas across to the school and left them in Mrs. Ghosh's office. This is not Henry's fault at all. Actually, Henry just slipped down and fallen into the papayas basket, and that time the gardener didn't look it, and he took the basket in the nursery school and kept it on the Mrs. Ghosh table in her room. When Mrs. Ghosh came in after making her rounds, she began admiring and examining the papayas. Out popped Henry. Mrs. Ghosh screamed. Henry squinted up at her, both eyes revolving furiously. Mrs. Ghosh screamed again. Henry turned, now green, now yellow, now red, and opened his mouth as though he too would like to scream. An assistant teacher rushed in, took one look at the chameleon, and joined in the screaming. So what happened after that? Mrs. Ghosh just took a round all over the school, and he came to her own cabin and saw the basket of the papaya, and she was very much admiring and examining the papayas. Just have a look. At that particular time, Henry just jumped over from the basket, and after seeing Henry, Mrs. Ghosh is screaming, is shouting loudly, and at that time Henry is feeling so horrified. Henry is getting horrified, and it blows the air, and he blows his body again, the enormous size, and his color has been changed from yellow to red to green, like this way. An assistant teacher was also over there. She also screaming out, shouted loudly. Okay, because they looked at, this is a wired chameleon. Henry took fright and fled from the office, running down the corridor and into one of the classrooms. There he climbed on a desk while children ran in all directions, some to get away from Henry, some to catch him. Henry made an emergency exit from the window and disappeared in the garden. So what happened to the next step? Henry took fright and fled from the office, running down from the stairs. Henry just go through from his office and coming down from the staircase and into one of the classroom, and just entered one of a classroom and sitting on a desk, looking at the chameleon. Every children just shouted. They are running in one direction, some are running other direction opposite from Henry. Some children wanted to catch Henry. There is a mess in the nursery school, and suddenly Henry need a emergency exit. That time Henry jumped it from a window and just vanished in the garden, into the garden. So in that nursery school, that time there was a mess, okay, all around. Grandmother heard all about the incident from Mrs. Ghosh, but did not tell her the chameleon was ours to save her friendship. So grandmother listened everything, but she didn't tell the truth that the chameleon was their pets, okay, because of their friendship with Mrs. Ghosh. Grandfather and I did not think Henry would find his way back to us because the school was 3 houses away. But 3 days later, I found him sunning himself on the garden wall. He readily accepted some food from my hand and never went out for adventures again. Grandfather and the narrator thought that Henry didn't come again to their house because the school was situated the 3 houses far from their own house. But after 3 days, the narrator found out that Henry was taking birth on the sun. It is a sunny morning and Henry is sunning himself on the garden wall, okay, and Henry was eagerly waiting to accept the food from the hand of the narrator. So he never went out of adventure again, and he does not want to do any adventure again like last time he did. So this is the complete explanation of this chapter. Just go through the chapter line by line. I think this video will help you to make you understand. Okay, thank you.